Hey everyone, a product I am obsessed with and have in my home kitchen at all times is O Olive Oil and Vinegar. O Olive Oil and Vinegar brings handcrafted artisan oil and premium vinegars to your table in exciting flavors. O Olive Oil and Vinegar products are made in California with only the freshest, cleanest ingredients and delivered directly to your doorstep. The Produce Moms podcast listeners can use code TPM15 for 15% off your order. I literally love every product they sell, and their gift box options are a great way to try the flavor bundles or give the perfect gift. O Olive Oil and Vinegar products feature complex flavors from California wine country and artisan crushed olive oils and extra virgin olive oils made with California olives. Visit ooliveoil.com and use discount code TPM15 to save some money. We are welcoming 3 incredible female leaders from agriculture who are representing the National FFA Organization and the National FFA Foundation. Welcome to the Produce Moms. This is the podcast where I talk to various people who've made an impact on the fruit and vegetable community. There are so many stories to share that will change the way you look at fresh produce. For those of you who are really in tune with agriculture, you know this organization. There's a good chance that you were part of it. You understand the impact that FFA has. And for those of you that might not be as in tune with FFA, these are the Blue Jackets. We see them in my hometown of Indianapolis on an annual basis, taking over as we have hosted convention here in Indianapolis, the national convention here in Indianapolis for several years. And the National FFA HQ is right here in my hometown of Indianapolis as well. So this is an organization that means a lot to me and everyone at the Produce Moms, and it most definitely means a ton to the farmers, the ranchers, and all of the stakeholders in ag that have been part of this show since its inception in 2018. So with that, welcome to the Produce Moms podcast. We are so excited for today's episode. I'm going to introduce our 3 guests. We've got Molly Ball. She is the president of the National FFA Foundation and the CMO of the National FFA Organization. We have 2 of the national officers, the current national officers, with us today on the show. Please help people understand a little bit more about what you do, what FFA is, and just give everyone an intro to who you are as a professional.
The National FFA Foundation is the fundraising arm of the organization. So we raise about $20 million a year to support programs and students across the country, from grants to student leadership programs to the convention you were talking about, Lori, from corporate partners, ranging from John Deere and Case IH to Corteva, our neighbor here at the HQ, as you mentioned, and just around the country, along with a lot of other individual donors. I was an FFA member myself. These ladies that are joining us were in 2 different states. They were around the country, all over the place, celebrating National FFA Week. But I got an opportunity to show off my jacket a little bit. It's one of the pieces of pride that I carry with me. And originally from Michigan, a row crop operation, and I showed horses. So a very small hobby farm, but loved agriculture so much. I went to Michigan State University and majored in agricultural communications. And here I am.
And can I just call out the fact that you said you can still wear your FFA jacket? Folks, that's like someone still fitting into their prom dress.
That was before baby number 3. I could still fit in it. After baby number 3, the jacket just sits on a hanger in my office. So I like to just hold it. And I still have some things from speeches and that sort of thing in it. But it's a little faded, but still very, very, very close to my heart.
The FFA jacket is so iconic in and of itself. It represents so much. And it's kind of like it's like a memento that connects so many people in ag. And it gives people like me, where I have found my pathway into agriculture. I was not an FFA member, and I have FOMO that I don't have a blue jacket. So
well, we can get you what we call, the swag. So I've got a sweatshirt on and a, a vest. We can get you some FFA swag so you can be part of the family.
Oh, well, I love that. And, there's no greater representation of the FFA family than our national officers. So like Molly said, folks, FFA is a student organization, and what a joy it is, anytime at the Produce Moms that we have an opportunity to coalesce and spotlight some of our FFA leaders, our active leaders. What a joy it is to have two of the current national officers with us on the show today. So Gracie, we will start with you for self-introduction, and just tell people a little bit more about where you're from and what you're representing as a national officer at FFA.
My official title is the National Eastern Region Vice President, which really just means that I come from the Eastern region of the nation, from the state of Illinois. But my friend and I, McKenna, we cover over 850,000 members in this nationwide organization that we're representing. So moving forward after this year, I'm going into college for agricultural education. So future dreams and goals are to someday return back to the classroom, but also look into consumer engagement and try to connect between producers and consumers. So just educating the public about what this industry entails, similar to what we're doing here today. But I'll let McKenna talk a little bit more about what we do as national officers.
So this year I have the honor and privilege of serving as the National FFA Southern Region Vice President, which, like Gracie said, just means that I come from the Southern regions. Very honored to represent North Carolina as the first female national officer from our state. So it's an honor to be here. I currently used to attend North Carolina State University. As national officers, we actually take a year off of our studies. So there I was studying agricultural education with minors in agribusiness and Spanish. And I was a junior there. So looking forward to going back. Go Pack as always, and excited to join back. Although I'm not quite sure what I want to do in the future, I do have interests in policy and legislation. So I'm excited to hopefully figure that out this year.
Amazing. And I did not realize that the national officers who are college age take a gap year to focus on being a national officer. Gracie, are you also currently in college?
Yes, ma'am. So I left my freshman year of college at Southern Illinois University.
And McKenna, what a great fun fact that you're the first female national officer from North Carolina. Such opportune timing to spotlight you as we really focus on women's history and the role of women in agriculture today. So with that, why don't we transition to talking a little bit more about the historical state of FFA, talk a little bit more about this timeline. Everyone, there is a beautiful timeline, ffa.org/FFA-history. You can access it right there from their homepage, ffa.org as well. I have pulled out some of the highlights from my point of view when I went through this timeline. And, by all means, Molly, as I'm going through these, I'd love for you to react on them. And then for our national officers, we'll give you an opportunity to react as well. But it started in 1969. This was that's not when the organization started, but so Molly, when did the organization actually begin?
So in 1928, what we like to say is 33 farm boys decided that vocational education was an extremely important part of the classroom. So as they were getting ready, we call it career and technical education today. So learning skills needed to go back to the farm. But there wasn't an organization for them to belong to create that opportunity for leadership opportunities. So in Kansas City, Missouri, they started the National FFA Organization in 1928. So we'll celebrate 100 years in 2028. But in 1969, it took that long for women to be allowed in the organization. Now, but I will say that's official. There have been chapters that I've been to all over this country who have said, teachers have said, I let them in. They were stars in my chapter. But officially, the delegates voted in 1969 to officially allow the women into FFA.
So the next milestone that I pulled from that timeline was 1976. Julie Smiley from Washington is elected National FFA Vice President and is the first female to hold a National FFA office. So McKenna, we got to shift the mic to you because I feel like this is maybe, there's a kinship here between yourself and what you're doing in the state of North Carolina and what Julie did, from the state of Washington.
Right. And Julie broke down so many barriers whenever she made that first step. And she let people just like me see themselves in a role that they hadn't previously seen themselves in. So it's really thrilling to know that even for the people in North Carolina, now I have the opportunity to do that. So those women that are stepping into those agriculture classrooms for the first time, they see a representation of that. And they think, wow, maybe that's going to be me one day. But even more so, there are states that also are waiting for that first female national officer. So I'm excited to be that for our entire country this year.
The Produce Moms is always accepting new brand partners. If you have a fruit or a vegetable product, or a product that has the same integrity and values of fresh produce, we want to help you. Visit theproducemoms.com, and in the footer of our homepage, please click on the Work With Us link. We look forward to supporting you. Next milestone that I pulled from your timeline, 1982. So I was 1 year old. Jan Eberly from California becomes the first female National FFA president.
Like McKenna said before, she definitely broke down some barriers being the first, but we've always been an organization. We're constantly growing as an organization to include all the perspectives. So from that moment on, we've always been trying to get those perspectives at the national level because we're representing all those people. So it's a good part of history to know that barrier is broken back then, and to know that continuing from then, just more perspectives and more growth has happened since then too.
And it's always hard for me when I think about how far women have come in society, and using FFA as the example today. That was just over 40 years ago that we had our first female president. That's it. I'm sure that, McKenna and Gracie, as you are living your best lives, as college age leaders and women, that might feel like eons ago, but really just over 40 years ago is not that long ago. So I also bring it up with an emphasis of, we've come a long way since, in 40 years time. Look at how much the organization and the landscape of the leadership has changed. How many total national officers are there, Gracie?
So there's 6 national officers, and actually this year, 4 out of those 6 are females.
Well, there you go.
I'm waiting for our first all-female team. We haven't had that yet. It'll happen. 1 year I thought it was going to happen, and then there was one boy out of, and then 5 others. And I thought, is this the year? Is this the year, as they were getting called up? And it wasn't, but I'm waiting for that.
Here's another one for Molly, your response on as the CMO. I don't know if there's been a more heartwarming marketing campaign that anyone has seen than what Ram Trucks did 10 years ago during the Super Bowl. Yep, 2013 was when the Super Bowl ad that really stopped everyone in their tracks, brought tears to their eyes. So God Made a Farmer commercial. It was replayed this year by like Ad Age and stuff as they were doing all of the commercial preparations and promotions for this year's Super Bowl commercials. It's still considered a gold standard of what a Super Bowl commercial can do to the millions of people it touches. So 2013, 10 years ago, Shireen Donaldson, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, Shireen Donaldson, first female National FFA Executive Secretary. So I'm assuming, is that a title similar to how you are the CMO, Molly?
How our board is set up, we have a national advisor, and then we have a board secretary. And when Shireen was, I would say elected, named, she actually worked for the Department of Education. So National FFA Organization, because we're school-based, we're unlike 4-H in that way. So we are school-based. You have to have an agricultural education instructor to have FFA. We're not an extracurricular. So Shireen was actually part of the Department of Education. We were an integral part as a career and technical education organization, part of Department of Education through our charter. And in 2000, and time escapes me post and pre-COVID. So 2020 was the year that we really broke our, I wouldn't say broke, but, disconnected with the Department of Education and really moved away because we really had no ties anymore to the Department of Education and said we're going to go on our own. So now this past year, we had the first female national advisor as an interim role. So Cheryl Zimmerman served as our national advisor, the first time for a national advisor to ever say opening ceremonies by a female was this past fall at the convention, if you can imagine that. So, it was a really cool and serene experience to watch her do that.
And what a great marketing campaign that was. Marketer to marketer. Molly, have you ever seen a better marketing campaign?
The Super Bowl commercial. So I came into FFA, back to FFA. This was my third time back to FFA because, I just can't get away. And so I remember sitting in my house. Everybody does. You know exactly the time that you saw that commercial, and you couldn't hear a pin drop. And so Paul Harvey recorded that. So God Made a Farmer at the 1978 National FFA Convention. So they had to come to us because in the estate of Paul Harvey to ask for that permission to use that voiceover. It was all very hush hush, as you can imagine. They decided over Christmas, this is what they were going to do. And to develop this entire campaign and really elevate the love and life of agriculture and the farmer. And what a better way to do it is to ensure at the end that they're going to give back to National FFA. Ram Trucks has been a sponsor of ours for almost 60 years. And so they are definitely really, great partners of ours. So they went around the country, took 3 weeks, went around the country, used this amazing photographer. The photography in that is just phenomenal, to capture images of people in agriculture. One of the things, though, that they look back on and didn't do is to capture enough of females in those images. And so that's kind of where Farm Her took off of, because there wasn't enough images of females as agricultural leaders or women who work in ag and food production. But yes, it was phenomenal. They told us if we got to over 1 million views by Monday or Tuesday of the next week, then they would give us $1 million. And by Monday afternoon, it was over 1 million views and shares and likes and the whole, 9 yards on social media. Still extremely beneficial to us, extremely iconic. I actually have a book in my office, a tabletop book of all of the photos they took. And I just recently actually heard a young woman from Texas rewrote it. And so this goes along with Women's History Month, and rewrote it to be on the 8th day. So God made a farmer's daughter. Yes, it's so moving to kids that grow up on farms with, dads and grandparents who, believe that their girls can do so much on the farm and can drive the tractor and, drive the trucks, and they don't have to just bring lunch. They are the ones that are doing things. So I'll send that to you, Lori, because it's really moving. This as an FFA member, actually wrote it and recited it at an FFA event. It's really, really neat.
Molly, I agree with you. Like, I remember watching that commercial live. I remember sharing it both on my personal page and on the Produce Mom social media. It's a commercial that, and then even like every year, annually on Super Bowl, some of these iconic agriculture brands and influencers will be sharing that exact commercial. So it's definitely, and I love hearing the back end too, like how when they look back at it now with the, with their modern day lens, they're like, oh, we should have had more female representation in it.
Marissa, who's a good friend of mine, she was sort of the brainchild behind that. And now she's at Stellantis and their brand manager for Stellantis. And she said, I just had this vision. I was just sitting there and I just had this vision and I had to include FFA. And we've got to, sort of at that time when, appreciating agriculture and appreciating what farmers do. And she knew what we did at the national level. And she said, I just had this vision, and like they worked nonstop to make it happen in the month of January.
Yeah, it came together. You said like during Christmas time. I mean, man, that is lightning speed, especially for a production of that scale and with that kind of visibility. Back to our timeline. And this one warmed my heart. 2017, Brianna Holbert from California is the first African-American female to be elected to the national, as the national FFA president. So obviously that milestone in and of itself is heartwarming. We are on the heels of Black History Month. We're in the midst of Women's History Month. Also, if you go back into our archives at the Produce Moms 2017 during National Convention, I had the privilege of working with the FFA organization as, and really it was through that it was through your education arm. Some of the folks from the Department of Education reached out to me about doing some live interview series from the convention hall that week. And I did 4 or 5 interviews with Brianna herself. And you can find those, in our archives at TPM. But wow, what a great milestone that is. McKenna, let's get your thoughts on this one. Do you know Brianna?
I do. So I was sitting in the crowd when Bree presented her retiring address. And I still remember what she talked about. It was about embracing the gap that we see a lot of times and how our differences, they contribute to a better world, not something that's bad, but something that's good. And I remember sitting in the crowd and just looking at her in awe of all that she was and who she is still to this day. And I've had conversations with Bree, whether that was over the phone or just bumping into her at WLC for Washington Leadership Conference. But she has served as an inspiration for me for years. And even coming from a mixed race household that I grew up in, seeing someone that didn't look like the traditional member was so huge to me because it created a way for me to feel seen, and it's still paving the way for others to be seen too. So Bree serves as an inspiration for so many, and we are so fortunate to still have her inspiring. She actually serves as one of my teammates' mentors this year, so she's still making a difference and still inspiring those around her.
That was the Garth Brooks concert.
Oh my gosh, that was quite a convention because the president also came that year.
Yes.
Incredible.
So my team and I, we purchased tickets to the Garth Brooks concert. We had they let the students have the good seats, and then the educators and the business partners and whatnot were in the nosebleeds, which is how it should be. But we were sitting we're the only ones up in our 600 level seat, excited for the Garth Brooks concert. And right before the show, someone came up. They're like, "Hey, we would like to offer you better seats, but you're going to have to stand the whole time because they're right by the stage." And I was like, "Okay, no problem." So my team and I, we still talk about that amazing concert. I thought that was the same convention, and that was remarkable. That right there speaks to what the type of access that convention provides to all of your members. I mean, to be in the room when the President of the United States is speaking, and to just be surrounded by your peers, like-minded individuals who share your interests, share your general demographic, that's incredibly unique access. I've worked on the last 3 farm bills, and there's not even people who work in DC and who are policy leaders who can say that. And then of course, from an entertainment point of view, how fun is that to have a private Garth Brooks concert, right? So
That's quite a year. And Garth, he's extremely generous. He did that concert for us for free. Yeah. Yeah. And so all of the resources that we got from the concert, we were able to put back into programs for students. So it was pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing. And then to be there with the president, and getting ready for that, it was a lot of sleepless nights, just trying to prepare for all of those guests to be there. Secretary of Education came. I think we had a couple secretaries that year. And when the president came, he was talking about the Farm Bill. He was asking us which side of the Farm Bill we liked more. Was it the Senate side or the House side? And he said, we were talking about it with the secretary, and, they just care so much about our future generation. Every politician that I've worked with, no matter what side they're so concerned with, how do we get this next generation of young people interested in the food and agricultural world, because it is so incredibly important to our globe.
It's so important. And we're going to talk about that in forthcoming remarks. It's so important. And it's amazing what convention provides, such unique access and an opportunity for so many future and present day leaders in our industry to share in that thought leadership and innovation. Thank you for sharing, Molly. So 2019 marked 50 years of female membership. And then today, Impact FFA, Women Growing Women Initiative. So, folks, we're going to take a brief break. And when we come back, we're going to talk with Molly and our duo of national officers about Impact FFA. Recently, we teamed up with our partners at Tanamura and Antle to create a wedge salad board. It was an instant success on our website, TikTok, and Instagram Reels. The star of the wedge salad board is, of course, Tanamura and Antle's Artisan Baby Iceberg. Artisan Baby Iceberg is grown to a naturally petite size, and it has the most amazing crunch with a mild yet sweet flavor. Artisan Baby Iceberg is truly one of my favorite items in the entire produce department. If it's not on shelf at your local grocer, you must request it. You will love it. Visit theproducemoms.com and search wedge salad board to check out this fan favorite recipe and entertaining concept. Visit taproduce.com to learn more about Tanamura and Antle. Welcome back. This is the Produce Moms podcast, and joined today by female leaders from the National FFA Organization and the National FFA Foundation. So, Molly, before the break, we were talking about Impact FFA, Women Growing Women. This is an initiative at FFA. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like it's somewhat of a new initiative based off the research I did on the website.
We've had it for a while. We just sort of rebranded it, I guess you can say. We raised money. It actually started from one of our female staff members years ago, about 10 years ago, who wanted to ensure that young women and young teachers or students that were going into the teaching profession had opportunities to expand themselves outside of the school classroom. And so there were many women on our board at the time who said, I feel the same way. Let's start this sort of women's giving club. And it I wouldn't say died. It just sort of slowed down for a little bit. And we had to focus on other things like making sure kids had blue jackets. So we really started raising the profile, give the gift of blue. But now we're really thinking about how do we, again, support our female teachers and support our young women. We're looking at a lot of female teachers going into the profession of ag education. And as women, we know there are so many things on our plate from all parts of our lives. But as a female ag education instructor, I think you have a different kind of pressure as a teacher, just our general teaching, but then an ag educator, is they do the FFA, but they also take kids on field trips and then they got a family at home, they've got to take care of. And so what we're hoping to do is help raise more dollars so that we can, give them scholarship to attend a conference where it just betters themselves or go abroad or, be able to have access to convention to bring their young women to convention. So, that's what we're hoping to do. In Rabo AgriFinance, we had our first Impact Women event last year at convention, and they sponsored it, in which we were able to bring these young women in to talk about future and careers in agriculture. So I hope that it takes off, and I hope that people continue to give to that so that we can do more for our young ladies. I actually have this really good anecdotal story of a teacher that came. She brought all of her FFA members from just south of Dallas. Her members have never been to Dallas, Texas. They're 30 minutes away. The socioeconomic disparity in that town is they're 90% free and reduced lunch. So she brought them to convention. One young lady, they're all so delightful, but her mom watches the teacher's son. So she's the daycare provider for the ag teacher's baby so that she can be at school and be at events and take her kids. She's like, whatever she needs, if I need to watch the baby overnight, I will help her because I want her to stay in the classroom. If we had more women helping women like that, our ag teachers would not feel the different pressures that they do and probably spend more time in the classroom with students.
And as someone who's kind of more on the business, certainly more on the business end, for more downstream from the on the farm operation of a lot of, FFA stakeholders that the organization represents and, folks that are tuning in with us, I can tell you too, like we feel that pressure, I think it's just, it's just female culture, and there's a lot of efforts right now to break down those barriers. And I can't help but think it goes back to the fact that, similar to our remarks earlier, with McKenna and Gracie, it's just 40 years like, we're really not that far away from, being in a position of equitable access even. And so perhaps that has heightened the competitiveness or the, like, survival of the fittest type of mindset amongst other women. And I don't know, but we certainly at the Produce Moms, a personal passion of mine. I wouldn't be a bootstrapping entrepreneur who's still in the room of 8 years of bootstrapping, if I didn't have great mentors and women who are joining me arm in arm and supporting my journey. The power of a great mentor, the power of this concept of women supporting women is, it can transform a landscape, a community, an individual. I mean, it has a profound impact. So I love hearing more about this initiative, Women Growing Women. The name is brilliant. You said you rebranded it. Whoever was involved with that, they did a great job.
I mean, that's what we do here. We grow young people to serve as the next generation wherever they're going to be, and empower them to male, female, empower them to support each other. I mean, even, having male colleagues in the agribusiness who understand the environment and the landscape of being a woman in the industry is really as important as other women.
So let's dive into some of the data, because it's one thing for women like Molly and I and, Gracie and McKenna to talk about, women growing women and why it's important, but it's another thing to listen to some of these stats. These stats can be found on the FFA website, ffa.org, the Women Growing Women section. All right. 36% of farms in the United States are led by women. That's a pretty big gap between the percentage then of, it's imbalanced. If it's a teeter-totter, we're not anywhere near being balanced here. All right. 36% are led by women. Here's another one. And my goodness, the State Department of Agriculture. All right. Women lead only 26% of state departments of agriculture in the United States. So, McKenna and Gracie, as you both have mentioned, potentially interested in the regulatory or policy side of agriculture, here you go. Big opportunity. And we need to balance that out. Women in agribusiness hold only 23% of the management positions. That's all of agribusiness, folks. 23% of management positions are held by women. And here's another one. Women hold only 10% of leadership roles in agriculture colleges at land-grant universities. Molly, I want you to help us understand this one in particular, because that's the biggest gap. But let's set the tone and maybe even define to folks agriculture colleges at land-grant universities. What's that even mean?
So you have land-grant universities that were formed by the Morrill Act, which provided government funding to, start colleges of agriculture. So young boys like we started in 1933 could learn how to start a business, back at the farm. The interesting part is I don't know the statistics on persistence in PhDs in agriculture for deans to become, to hold those positions. But, I think there is, I'll talk to this, and then I think it correlates with the agribusiness world, is there's some fear of failure. I was, one of my great friends, she's a leader at Cargill, and she said, we only have we have all these leadership positions open at Cargill. Only 25% are female. She said, because I had a woman come to me one time and she asked them, why don't you apply? You're like in the perfect position. You should apply for this. She goes, I fear that I'm going to fail. I feel that I'm going to fail either at work or I'm going to fail at home. I can't fail at both. So how do we, and that was very profound for me. I feel like I'm going to fail. How do we get that word out of young women or leaders' mouths? Because you can't you can do both. It's not going to be 50-50. It's going to be 90-10 some weeks or 60-40. Believe me, at National Convention, I am not home. I don't even communicate with my family. It is like, here you go. Good luck. See you on the other side. So how do we get that word out of young women's mouths of, I feel like I'm going to fail. Either I have to be 100% there or 100% here. And I think that's the same thing with land grant institutions is, persisting to get the PhD. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of, research time, and a lot of time away from your family. How do we do both? You can do both. It's just, but I see it though in men though, it's like, oh, well, he has more time because it's just he's not as needed as home. But I see it turning a little bit, but I think I always call ag and FFA, like we're like a aircraft carrier. It's very hard for us to turn swiftly. We turn very slowly.
And I definitely think it applies, and anyone in agriculture shaking their head in agreement right now. But something that your remarks reminded me of is a saying that I say to people all the time, because I get those inquiries a lot. How do you do it all? And my response is usually, I don't do it all. There is this concept of balance is a joke. There is no balance. There's only balancing. It's an active verb. It's an it's an ongoing fluid action where, like, to your point, Molly, some days I'm putting 90% into my household bucket, and some days I'm putting 90% into my work bucket. And I've also seen a Venn diagram type graphic where it puts all these different things that women are pressured to do, like succeed at work, succeed at home, be a great, partner.
Volunteer.
Yep. Have stay physically fit.
Right.
And so it lists all these things and it says, women, pick two.
Yeah. I think when you hit a certain age though, girls, listen to this. When you hit a certain age, you're like, yep, not doing that. Can't do that right now. Nope, not doing that. Can't do that. I'll get back to it. Like, you kind of pick and choose.
The leadership journey and the self-awareness journey of getting to the point where you can say no is such a noble journey, one that you'll learn a lot about. It's a great journey of self-discovery. But Molly, what wonderful remarks, and thank you for helping to explain, land grant universities and why there is that 10% leadership role. And I wish that I was surprised when you said that the fear of failure is a known reason why there are some of these gaps and disparities of female presence. So on that tone, McKenna and Gracie, let's talk to you. I mean, you guys are right there in it. College students taking a year off to hone in on your leadership skills, embark on this incredible journey as national officers with FFA. This is like check, 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 everything that you could do to have a stand alone, like, stellar resume. You are doing it right now. You are positioning yourself for great success. But I want to talk to both of you about this, but I want to hear your remarks. Like, after hearing these data points, how do you feel that you are part of the future of agriculture? What do you want other females and specifically teens and young adults to know about careers in agriculture and how the future can and will be more female forward?
Before I answer that question, if you don't mind me adding into that conversation, when I was going through the process, I had a conversation with Miriam Hoffman, who is a former national officer, served as one of my biggest mentors. And she recommended that I read this book called Essentialism, which pretty much just gives a solution to the problem that, y'all are talking about, balancing those things in life. So, for me as a female, as an agriculturist, I think it's important that we focus on what's really important. And I think one thing that's important for me is, as we represent everyone in the organization and in the agriculture industry, it's important to note that one person can't change the world, but they can change the world for one person. So I think when I think of my part in the future, sure, I want to say all these data points that I want to go away and all these things that I want to change, but at the end of the day, I'm just one person, but still I am one person. So I guess if anybody's listening, just a reminder that don't get this idea in your head that you have the ability to change the world, because realistically you can't change the whole entire world, but you can do something to make a difference. So I just hope going into this education and advocacy route that I inspire somebody to understand, and that starts kind of a trickle effect down to other people to hopefully close this gap and for everybody to have an understanding of what their purpose is in the industry.
I think our motto does a great job of illustrating exactly how we are the future of agriculture. It says we're learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve. And that really just speaks of the values that we hold ourselves to and how we can hold ourselves accountable to being that next generation that's going to lead and empower and change the world. Whenever I think about all the futures in agriculture and what those careers might look like for our teens and women out there, I want to keep in mind that yes, we are the future farmers of America, but we're also the future doctors, the future lawyers, the teachers. And the important thing to emphasize here is even though your path might not be going back to that farm, which is as admirable as it is, it's important that we start now and we're having those tough conversations. We're having informed conversations. And even more than that, we're knowledgeable about where our food comes from and we know the processes that it takes to get food from the farm to the table, because that's how we start the next generation of agriculture, by being more informed, by being those advocates and allowing others to see examples within ourselves.
So, Molly, we've talked so much about, obviously this is a female forward episode, unapologetically, but let's make sure that we clear the air for anyone that, might not be aware of the breadth of what FFA entails and how your work really is about elevating all people through the values of FFA and through the industry of agriculture. And, to McKenna's point, you're not just about future farmers. So let's get a little bit more info on that, Molly, and insight.
McKenna said, we're preparing the next generation of agriculture leaders, agriculture and food leaders. And to do that, they have to be ready for an interconnected and diverse world. When they walk into a company or a conversation, it's going to be with people that don't look like you, that don't have the same background as you. And so we need to prepare them for that. And our membership, I like to say it's kind of a third urban, a third suburban, a third rural. And we're growing in the urban areas. Actually, our CEO, Scott Stump, was just in New York City last weekend to open 4 new chapters in the New York City boroughs. Four. The New York State Department of Education has talked about agriculture education classrooms as being as important as other classrooms because it teaches you a world of different things, from science to business and everything else. And so they have infused money and resources to be opening more classrooms. And those kids also need hands-on kind of opportunities. So they've opened 4 there, but we are all still very rural too. We've got rural communities who have, are still very much rooted in agriculture. And we've got to help those students to see there's a world out there of technology that is entailed with agriculture. There's a world out there that is beyond their county. I mean, we hear all the time students, and you might have while you're walking around the convention, who literally this is the first time they've ever left their county seat and have gotten on an elevator or have been on an escalator before. And it's those stories that just bring a smile to my face because we did that. We got them out of there. We got them to the convention and they have seen a huge opportunity.
When I was interviewing Bree and involved boots on the ground as doing the live streaming and stuff, I met so many students that said, this is the first time I've ever slept in a hotel, like slept outside of my home farm or ranch or whatever it might be. They're like, this is my first time in a hotel.
I know, even if they're coming from a rural area, even suburban and urban kids, they don't, because of their background, they don't have an opportunity to leave that city or even, so what we're hoping to do is just open their eyes to just a whole world of opportunity. And like McKenna said, it doesn't matter if they don't go, well, I would love them all to go in agriculture and food, but to be ready to be global citizens is really important to us. So FFA is a place where students belong. We want them to walk in the classroom to feel like they belong. And when they zip up that blue jacket for the first time, we want them to feel like it's their cape of, power, like Iron Man or Captain America. They zip up that cape and they're like, I can do anything in this jacket. It's going to allow me to do whatever I want in life. And so, we're growing 850,000 students, 13,000 chapters. Every year we grow more students, and people say, how do you continue to grow? And I think it's because, we realized through COVID that food is one of our most important, commodities, assets. Going to the grocery store and making sure that those store shelves were filled was so incredibly important during that time. And now we appreciate people who touch ag now. And so I think it's becoming one of those, and then technology is really starting to, to come to life in agriculture, even though it's always there. Microsoft has been one of our largest
Blue Room, right? Isn't that
to
what,
say,
yes.
you remember the Blue Room. And, why they came on board was they were like, we know that there was a West Coast and an East Coast, but we forgot about the middle of this country that, is full of technology.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Molly, I was at the Consumer Electronics Show. For folks that aren't familiar with CES, I mean, you're talking like it takes over the city of Las Vegas on an annual basis. And it's literally any brand that's an electronic. That's where that's where the new PlayStation is launched. That's where the new, the driverless cars, like the automatic driving cars are launched. I was there with agriculture leaders, and John Deere was talking of, they were one of the, they kind of came out of nowhere at CES. People were like, John Deere, the tractor company, has like all this technology. So I think it definitely, to your point, and that was I attended and was part of those discussions in 2020, right before the world changed. And one of the top hot topics was the rise and implementation of 5G across America, and then you had like the agriculture leaders, and that was really led by John Deere, and it was like pumping the brakes, like, hey, we don't even have broadband yet in rural America. We need to focus on making sure that our farmers have connectivity. And I know that Microsoft and what they've done with the Blue Room and Mary and the whole team there that's been behind that, it's just been, it's been amazing how they've, heightened the awareness even of technology and agriculture, and how it's really a convergence. We talk about that all the time in produce, how it's like Silicon Valley and Salinas Valley, come together every single day. And I'm sure every ag region can say the same thing. But all right, so let's talk. We don't have a ton of time left in today's episode, unfortunately. I feel like we could, the four of us could talk for 2 hours if we wanted to. But Molly, we haven't talked much about the foundation, and you're the president of the National FFA Foundation. I want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to really talk about what the foundation does, who the benefactors are, the mission, and most importantly, like the people who are with us today, how can they get involved? How can they support what you're doing?
So in the 50s, actually, Harvey Firestone was a partner of ours, and he said, we've got to support these young kids. We've got to support the local chapters across the country. And so how do we do that? So Harvey Firestone, being the founder of Firestone Tires, he decided to write to his friends to ask them to give back to this organization called Future Farmers of America. And if you can imagine, his friends were the John Deere family and the Chevrolet family and the Ford family and others. And I think in that 1956, we raised $100,000 by his letter writing campaign. Take on each year. And then we have now cost about $20 million. We raise around $20 million a year from individual donors, but more so corporate, because of that start we had in the 50s, around corporate giving. And so, our largest partner, some of our largest partners are Rural Media Group, our John Deere, our CHS, Cargill, all of the agricultural companies. We're so blessed to have so many supporters, individually and corporate, but we support states, We support over $2 million in scholarships. We have since early 1990. Ford was the first to say we want to provide scholarships to young people at the local level. So they provide scholarships, grants to chapters, grants for growing through Tractor Supply Company. So you go into a Tractor Supply Company and you round up to buy an emblem. And that gives back to Grants for Growing. Grants for Growing is a grant to the chapter where they can buy whatever they want. And then we've got, national programs like our Washington Leadership Conference, as the ladies talked about. We have huge support from the Indianapolis community around National Convention. And then we also support the people in this building. So without this, the support of the partners, the people in this building at 6060 FFA Drive in Indianapolis could not do what they do for thousands of FFA members. So we don't take that lightly. We don't take it lightly what we do every day. We don't take it lightly who supports us. And I just appreciate all of them. So we've been around formally as a foundation since 1978, but have been doing the fundraising bit since in the 50s.
Molly, how many active members today in the FFA student population?
More than 850,000.
And that spans all 50 states as well as U.S. territories, correct?
Yep. So these two ladies will start on their journey in the next week or so, where they will attend, I want to say 8 state conventions, about 7 or 8, where they will, meet with students. They will give, workshops and talks and that sort of thing. And then they also start on their business industry tours. And that's why they're here today, because we're training them on their business industry tours. So they go and meet with our partners around the country. So they're on the road, probably, I would say a good 100,000 miles a year, just visiting with industry chapters, state conventions, mingling with students. It's their work. They get to touch a lot of students. They get to touch a lot of airplanes. They get to touch a lot of Zoom calls. So it's quite an experience, transforming experience.
Absolutely lovely to hear all these wonderful remarks. Gracie and McKenna, we cannot close out today's show without giving you an opportunity for a little bit more mic time. So McKenna, we'll start with you. What's the one thing you really want people to remember from this episode? What's your key message or guiding light that you want to leave with our audience today?
Whenever I walked into the agricultural classroom as a transfer student, I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. And I constantly asked this question, okay, so why should I get involved? And I look back and I constantly think, I should have asked why not. So if I can encourage you in anything today, I hope this episode that we've been able and privileged to do has empowered you, but even more so, I hope it has you ask the question, why not? Because there's a home within agriculture. There's so much diversity. We've spoke about the women that are leading and pioneering the future. And I'm so excited to see how our organization continues to develop and empower those leaders. So I hope you left empowered, encouraged, and I hope you seek out how FFA and agriculture can be that home for you as well.
Thank you, McKenna. Gracie, I'm going to pass the mic to you. Same question, basically. I mean, what do you want folks to remember?
We talked a little bit earlier about how people get in this head about how, they just think that they're going to fail. That comes from people thinking that they have to do everything like you just said. And I touched on it a little bit before, but really just for people to know that we want to fix all the world's problems, but one person realistically can't do that. So, it's really a mindset thing, but really just to know that no, you're only one person. You can't fix the world's problems, but still you are one person and you have the ability to make a difference. So I would just say focus on one thing that you're passionate about, one thing that you really, really care about, because if people see you doing that, then other people will follow too. And really we're serving as mentors to more people than we realize. So really just remember that, you're only one, but still you are one that has the ability to make a difference.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Produce Moms podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and any preferred podcast platform. Check out the Produce Moms on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Special thanks to everyone involved with the Produce Moms podcast, my amazing team. Stay tuned till next time. The Produce Moms photography studio is now open. Our photographer Jan has been taking beautiful photos for theproducemoms.com for nearly a decade, and now we are opening up our Indianapolis-based photography studio to help other brands with their food photography. The Produce Moms Photography Studio is trusted by some of the biggest brands in fruits and vegetables. We're your solution for seasonal, lifestyle, and packaging photography. Our photos have been used for national retailer ads, e-commerce technology, print, digital, social media, and more. To learn more or to schedule your photo shoot with us, email me, Lori@theproducemoms.com.